In the wake of Pope Francis's passing, the world waited. Behind the closed doors of the Sistine Chapel, 129 cardinals from every continent gathered to elect the next leader of 1.3 billion Catholics. But when the white smoke rose and the name Leo XIV was announced, many asked, who is he and why him? From the working-class streets of Chicago to the dusty villages of Peru, this is the story of the first American Pope, a quiet man with a bold mission to heal, reform, and renew the Catholic Church. Before proceeding to watch this video, please support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. On April 21st, 2025, Easter Monday, Pope Francis passed away peacefully at the age of 88. His death marked the end of a papacy that had profoundly shaped the modern Catholic Church and left a lasting legacy on global religious and social life. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, Francis had served as Pope since 2013. Over the course of 12 transformative years, he led the Church with a spirit of humility, compassion, and reform. Pope Francis was the first Jesuit pope and the first from the Americas. His election in 2013 broke centuries-old traditions and signaled a turning point for the Church. From the beginning, he chose simplicity over grandeur, rejecting the lavish papal apartment in favor of modest quarters and emphasizing a vision of servant leadership. His namesake, St. Francis of Assisi, became a symbol of his mission to build a church that prioritized the poor, the vulnerable, and the forgotten. Under his leadership, the Vatican undertook major reforms. He addressed corruption in the Curia, overhauled the Vatican Bank, and emphasized pastoral care over rigid doctrinal enforcement. His encyclicals, especially Laudato Si on environmental care and Fratelli Tutti on human fraternity, reached beyond the boundaries of Catholicism to engage with broader global concerns. Francis also placed great emphasis on synodality, a process of listening and discernment among bishops and laity. He encouraged open discussions on challenging topics such as divorce and remarriage, LGBTQ+ inclusion, clerical celibacy, and the role of women in the Church. Though his reforms were met with both praise and resistance, he remained steadfast in his commitment to a more inclusive and merciful Church. By the time of his death, Pope Francis had appointed over 70% of the College of Cardinals, shaping the body that would eventually choose his successor. Many of these cardinals shared his vision of a global, pastoral, and reform-minded church. With his passing, the Church entered a time of mourning, reflection, and transition. The days that followed saw millions gather in Rome and around the world to pay their respects. Pilgrims flocked to St. Peter's Basilica, where his body lay in state, offering prayers and thanksgiving for a pontificate that had touched countless lives. Leaders from around the globe sent condolences, recognizing his influence as a spiritual leader and a moral voice in turbulent times. The death of Pope Francis also ushered in the solemn process of the sede vacante, the period between pontificates. Vatican protocols were set in motion. The papal apartments were sealed, and preparations began for the conclave, a sacred gathering of cardinals from across the world to discern the next successor to St. Peter. As the Church grieved the loss of a shepherd, attention slowly turned toward the future, Questions emerged. Who could follow in the footsteps of a pope who had broken so many molds? Who could continue his legacy while guiding the church into a new era? Robert Francis Prevost was born on September 14, 1955, in Chicago, Illinois, to a devout Catholic family of French and Spanish heritage. Raised on the city's southwest side, in a working-class neighborhood rooted in faith and tradition, his early life was shaped by strong family values, parish life, and the rhythms of Catholic devotion. The church was not just a place of worship, it was a second home, a place where his vocation quietly began to take root. As a young boy, Robert was known for his quiet disposition, sharp intellect, and deep sensitivity to the needs of others. He attended Catholic schools, where his academic promise became apparent. His interest in service, scripture, and theology gradually grew alongside a strong desire to live a life of purpose. The influence of local priests and the support of parish community helped nurture his calling. In his teenage years, Robert encountered the writings of St. Augustine, the great doctor of the Church, whose confessions of inner struggle, conversion, and truth deeply resonated with him. This led him to discern a vocation with the Order of Saint. Augustine, one of the Church's oldest religious orders, known for its emphasis on community, intellectual pursuit, and spiritual contemplation. In 1977, Robert entered the Augustinian novitiate and began his formal path toward religious life. He embraced the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and was drawn particularly to the order's missionary spirit and academic rigor. He would later earn a licentiate and doctorate in canon law from the Pontifical Catholic University of Peru and the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. In 1982, he was ordained a priest. His ordination was not only a personal milestone, but the beginning of decades of service that would take him far from his native Chicago. At a time when many religious vocations remained in the comfort of familiar surroundings, Father Prevost accepted an assignment that would define much of his life and ministry. He was sent to Peru. There, in a region marked by poverty and spiritual hunger, he would live and serve for over 2 decades. His role was not limited to administering sacraments or celebrating Mass. He became a pastor, counselor, teacher, and bridge builder among the poor. The people of Peru saw in him more than a foreign missionary. They saw a priest who walked with them, learned their language, shared their struggles, and never imposed, only invited. His Spanish became fluent, and his understanding of the local culture profound. He helped lead initiatives in education, youth ministry, and diocesan formation. In time, his pastoral approach and deep theological training made him a respected leader both within and beyond his religious order. As his reputation grew, so too did his responsibilities. In 2001, Father Prevost was elected Prior General of the Order of St. Augustine, the highest position within the order. For the next 12 years, he oversaw Augustinian missions and ministries around the world, traveling to over 50 countries and representing the order within the wider church. His leadership was marked by clarity, compassion, and fidelity to the order's spiritual legacy. Though he always considered himself a missionary at heart, this new phase of life brought him to the global stage. As Prior General, he met frequently with popes, bishops, and church leaders, advocating for religious renewal and global solidarity. His work earned the attention and respect of church authorities, including Pope Francis, who saw in him a man of both vision and humility. By the time he returned to Peru in 2015 to serve as Bishop of Chiclayo, Father Prevost was already being seen as a man prepared for greater roles in the universal church. Yet, through it all, he remained grounded, rooted in the virtues that had guided him since Chicago: service, integrity, and quiet strength. In the early 1980s, as much of Latin America struggled with poverty, political instability, and the wounds of social inequality, a young Augustinian priest named Robert Prevost received a call that would define his vocation. His superiors in the order of St. Augustine asked him to go to Peru, a country both beautiful and wounded, rich in history, yet marked by deep suffering. For Father Prevost, it was not just a change of geography, but a profound shift in perspective. Arriving in the northern coastal region of Chiclayo, he entered a world far removed from his upbringing in Chicago. He encountered families living in makeshift homes, communities lacking reliable health care and education, and parishioners carrying burdens of violence and poverty. But he also found something else: a resilient faith, a hunger for hope, and a people whose warmth and devotion would change him forever. Rather than approaching his new assignment as an outsider or authority father, Prevost chose to walk with the people. He spent time learning the nuances of Peruvian Spanish and immersing himself in local culture. He lived simply and ministered tirelessly, often traveling to remote villages where priests were rarely seen. Whether celebrating the Eucharist under a tin roof or comforting grieving families, he earned a reputation for humility and constancy. As the years passed, his role expanded. He began overseeing formation for young Augustinians and mentoring local vocations. His knowledge of canon law, which he had studied in both Peru and Belgium, equipped him to serve as a diocesan consultant and spiritual director to countless clergy and religious. He became a trusted voice not only among the people, but also among church leaders throughout the region. Peru in the 1980s and 90s was a nation in turmoil. Guerrilla warfare, government corruption, and economic collapse tore at the fabric of society. In the midst of this instability, the church became a refuge. Father Prevost worked alongside other clergy and lay leaders to build programs that addressed both spiritual and material needs, offering catechesis, education, food distribution, and psychological support for families scarred by violence. His efforts were not unnoticed. Within the Augustinian community, he was seen as a model missionary. His combination of intellectual depth and pastoral compassion made him a natural leader. In 2001, his brothers in the order elected him prior general, and he left Peru temporarily to serve at the Augustinian headquarters in Rome. But even during his 12 years as the global head of the order, his heart remained tied to Peru. He returned often, checking in on missions, rekindling relationships, and continuing to advocate for the poor. In 2014, after completing his service as prior general, he made the surprising decision to return to Chiclayo, not in a high-profile role, but simply as a priest and missionary. Yet Providence had other plans. In 2015, Pope Francis named him Apostolic Administrator of Chiclayo, and soon after appointed him its bishop. The people rejoiced. They knew him not as a distant foreigner, but as Padre Roberto, a shepherd who had walked among them for decades. As bishop, he brought a renewed focus on pastoral care, clergy formation, and social justice. He supported indigenous communities, defended the rights of migrants, and encouraged young people to see the church as a source of hope, not judgment. His episcopate was marked by accessibility. He was often seen in the streets, at local parishes, and in the homes of the sick and elderly. Father Prevost's mission in Peru was more than an assignment. It was a vocation within a vocation. It shaped his theology, deepened his spirituality, and rooted him in the lived realities of the poor. Long before his name would be known across the world, his legacy was already etched in the hearts of the Peruvian people. By the early 2000s, Father Robert Prevost was no longer just a missionary in Peru. He had become a respected figure within the global church. His years of pastoral work, his intellectual grounding in canon law, and his ability to connect across cultures positioned him for a new and significant responsibility. In 2001, during the 174th General Chapter of the Augustinian Order, he was elected Prior General, the highest authority within the order worldwide. This election brought him to Rome, where he would lead the Augustinians for the next 12 years. As Prior General, Father Prevost was charged with overseeing thousands of friars, priests, and brothers across more than 40 countries. It was a role that required both administrative skill and spiritual depth, a balance he carried with grace. His leadership style was marked by listening, discernment, and careful attention to the needs of each community, whether in Africa, Asia, Europe, or the Americas. During his time in office, he traveled extensively, visiting mission houses, seminaries, and parishes. He sought not only to maintain order and discipline, but also to foster growth and renewal within the order. He emphasized ongoing formation, intercultural dialogue, and fidelity to the Augustinian charism, a love for truth, a commitment to communal life, and a thirst for God rooted in interior reflection and service to others. Father Prevost also led the order through times of challenge. The early 21st century was a difficult period for many religious institutions, marked by vocations crises in the West, cultural shifts, and the lingering wounds of clergy abuse scandals. Through it all, he encouraged transparency, accountability, and above all, a return to authentic Christian witness. His calm, prayerful leadership earned the respect of other religious superiors and key figures within the Vatican. After completing 2 6-year terms, Father Prevost stepped down in 2013 in accordance with the order's rules. He could have remained in Rome or taken up a prestigious academic post. Instead, true to his missionary heart, he returned to Peru. That same year, Pope Francis, who had just been elected Pope, took note of this quiet but influential Augustinian. In 2015, the Pope named him Bishop of Chiclayo, officially recognizing what the people had long known, that Father Prevost was more than a missionary, he was a true shepherd. As bishop, he brought renewed focus to catechesis, seminary formation, and social outreach. He encouraged parishes to be places of both prayer and action, deeply rooted in Scripture and boldly engaged with the needs of society. In 2020, during the global COVID-19 pandemic, Bishop Prevost's pastoral sensitivity became especially clear. He coordinated relief for struggling families, ensured that sacraments were still accessible despite lockdowns, and supported exhausted healthcare workers. His leadership during this crisis drew admiration both locally and in the wider church. In 2023, Pope Francis appointed him prefect of the dicastery for bishops, one of the most influential roles in the Roman Curia. In this position, Archbishop Prevost was responsible for evaluating candidates for the episcopacy around the world and advising the Pope on episcopal appointments. It was a task requiring discernment, integrity, and a global outlook, qualities he had cultivated over decades. As prefect, he brought fresh eyes to the process, emphasizing pastoral competence, humility, and proximity to the people of God as essential qualities for bishops. His selections often reflected the Pope's vision for a church that is missionary, merciful, and close to the margins. By the time of Pope Francis' death in 2025, Robert Francis Prevost had become one of the most trusted voices in the Vatican, respected not for ambition, but for his faithfulness, wisdom, and global experience. The death of Pope Francis on April 21, 2025, ushered the Catholic Church into a sacred and solemn period known as the sede vacante, the empty seat. With the chair of St. Peter vacant, the eyes of the world turned toward the College of Cardinals, entrusted with the weighty task of discerning the next pope. In the days that followed, cardinals arrived in Rome from every corner of the globe. By May 3rd, all 129 cardinal electors, those under the age of 80 and eligible to vote, had gathered behind the walls of Vatican City. Among them was Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, prefect of the dicastery for bishops, and the former missionary bishop of Chiclayo, Peru. Though well respected, his name was not initially among the most widely discussed. The 2025 conclave was shaped by the legacy of Pope Francis, who had appointed a significant majority of the cardinal electors. Many of them shared his pastoral outlook, global perspective, and concern for the poor. Yet, there was no obvious successor. The Church stood at a crossroads, facing growing secularism in the West, persecution in parts of Africa and Asia, ecological crisis, and a hunger for spiritual renewal across continents. The cardinals entered the Sistine Chapel in prayerful silence, each man under oath not to reveal the proceedings to the outside world. There were no campaign speeches, no lobbying, no fanfare, only silent discernment, whispered conversations, and the slow, sacred rhythm of voting. The early ballots revealed a divided body. Several names drew support. One was a Latin American cardinal known for social justice work. Another, a European theologian with deep doctrinal expertise. A third, an African cardinal admired for his courage under pressure, but none achieved the necessary two-thirds majority. Then, quietly, a different name began to emerge, Prevost. Though not considered a front-runner, his profile intrigued many. He had global missionary experience, theological training, fluency in multiple languages, and perhaps most critically, a deep understanding of episcopal leadership through his role in the dicastery for bishops. He was American by birth, Peruvian by heart, Roman by service, and Augustinian by soul. More than one cardinal reportedly said, "He is a man who listens, a man who understands the church across continents." His humility and calm presence during the general congregations, the pre-conclave meetings, had not gone unnoticed. He was not loud, but his words carried weight. He had no political ambition. He was, in the eyes of many, a bridge between worlds. By the sixth ballot, momentum had shifted. The votes for Prevost grew rapidly, His name, once whispered with curiosity, now carried the echo of consensus. By the 8th ballot, on the 3rd day of voting, the white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel chimney. Habemus Papam, we have a pope. When Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, the senior cardinal bishop, stepped onto the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to make the formal announcement, a hushed crowd waited in suspense. Then came the words, Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum, habemus papam, eminentissimum acci reverendissimum dominum, Robertum Franciscum Prevost, qui sibi nomen imposuit Leo XIV. Robert Francis Prevost had been elected the 267th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. He took the name Leo XIV, invoking the memory of a long line of reform-minded leaders and signaling a commitment to clarity, discipline, and renewal. The crowd erupted in cheers, though many still asked, "Who is this new Pope?" For millions, the name was unfamiliar. But for those who knew his story, his life in Peru, his quiet service in Rome, his deep Augustinian spirituality, the choice was providential. Pope Leo XIV stepped onto the balcony, dressed in white, his expression calm but moved. Before giving his first papal blessing, he bowed deeply and asked the people to pray for him. It was a gesture echoing that of Pope Francis 12 years earlier, but with a new voice, a new mission, and a new chapter in church history about to unfold. The election of Robert Francis Prevost as Pope Leo XI marked a pivotal moment in the history of the Catholic Church. As the first American Pope, Leo XIV's election was not only a historical milestone, but a profound symbol of the global nature of the Church in the 21st century. His election came at a time when the Church faced immense challenges, but also opportunities for renewal and transformation. His journey from a working-class neighborhood in Chicago to the chair of St. Peter was a testament to the unexpected ways in which God's calling can shape a life. Pope Leo XIV's choice to take the name Leo was significant. It harkened back to the legacy of Pope Leo XIII, whose social teachings helped shape the modern Catholic understanding of labor, justice, and the rights of workers. Like Leo XIII, Pope Leo XIV was deeply concerned with the issues of social justice, especially in relation to poverty, migration, and the environment, issues that had defined his pastoral work throughout his career. As the first American Pope, Leo XIV brought with him the sensibilities of a churchman, shaped by both the vibrant Catholic faith of the Americas and the intellectual rigor of the global Church. His life was one of bridge building between diverse cultures, languages, and experiences. He had spent over 2 decades in Peru, living among the poor and marginalized, and his approach to the papacy would reflect this deep connection to the lived realities of people in both the global South and the global North. His first papal address to the world was marked by humility and vision. Standing on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, he spoke not with the authority of a pope claiming power, but with the voice of a shepherd calling his flock to unity and renewal. In his first words, he emphasized a theme that would become central to his papacy: mercy and reconciliation. "I come to you not as a prince or a ruler, but as a servant," Pope Leo XIV said. "We are called to be a church that listens, a church that heals, a church that shows the face of Christ to the world through acts of love, compassion, and justice. Let us walk together as one people, united by the love of God and our shared responsibility for one another. His words resonated deeply with many in the Church. Like Pope Francis before him, Leo XIV emphasized the need for the Church to be in the peripheries, reaching out to the poor, the sick, the imprisoned, and the lonely. But Leo XIV also understood that in a world increasingly divided by ideology, the Church needed to be a voice of reason, hope, and unity. He called for a greater cooperation between Catholics, Protestants, and people of other faiths, recognizing that in the face of global challenges like climate change, war, and inequality, cooperation was more important than division. His appointment of key figures to the Roman Curia reflected his desire to foster collaboration and openness within the Church. Many of those appointed to leadership positions were figures known for their commitment to social justice, dialogue, and reform. It was clear from the start that Pope Leo XIV intended to lead the Church not just in doctrinal matters, but in shaping the way the Church interacted with the world. One of the most significant aspects of his papacy was his approach to the ongoing issues surrounding the global Church's response to the sexual abuse crisis. Pope Leo XIV inherited this deeply painful issue from his predecessors, and he made it a priority to address it with transparency, accountability, and a commitment to healing. His papacy would see new measures taken to protect the vulnerable, hold abusers accountable, and offer support to victims. In the early months of his papacy, Pope Leo XIV also reached out to the Catholic faithful in the Americas. His roots in the United States and his familiarity with the challenges facing Latin American nations made him uniquely positioned to speak to the needs of Catholics in the Western Hemisphere. In his first visit abroad, he traveled to the United States, where he met with leaders in Washington, D.C., and celebrated Mass for millions of pilgrims in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. His visit to Latin America was equally impactful as he celebrated Masses with tens of thousands of people in Argentina, Brazil, and Peru, offering messages of hope and unity to the Church in the region. In his homilies and writings, Pope Leo XIV continued to focus on themes of reconciliation and healing. He emphasized the importance of dialogue between the Church and modernity, encouraging Catholics to engage with contemporary issues such as the environment, human rights, and social justice through the lens of Catholic social teaching. He made it clear that the Church could no longer afford to remain silent or passive in the face of global crises. It was time for the faithful to act as instruments of peace, justice, and mercy in the world. As the first American pope, Pope Leo XIV's papacy was a historic and spiritual moment for the Church. His deep roots in both the Americas and the global Church, his commitment to the poor and marginalized, and his emphasis on unity and reconciliation made him a leader poised to guide the Catholic Church through a period of profound transformation. Pope Leo XIV's papacy was not only a historical moment for the Church, but also a hopeful sign that the future of the Church would be shaped by those who sought to lead with mercy, humility, and a deep love for the people of God. The papacy of Pope Leo XIV, born Robert Francis Prevost, stands as a testament to the enduring vitality and adaptability of the Roman Catholic Church in a changing world. From his humble beginnings in the streets of Chicago to his missionary work in Peru and ultimately to the throne of St. Peter, his life has been marked by a quiet but firm commitment to service, humility, and justice. As the first American Pope, Leo XIV did not ascend to the papacy as a man of ambition, but as a man of deep listening, a pastor rooted in experience, dialogue, and discernment. His leadership represents a bridge between continents, between tradition and reform, between doctrine and mercy. He brought with him the spirit of the Americas and the wisdom of the global church, and he offered it not as a mandate, but as a gift of reconciliation and renewal. In a world divided by war, inequality, and secularism, Pope Leo XIV offered the church and the world a different path, one rooted in compassion, truth, and hope. His emphasis on healing the wounds of abuse, advocating for the poor, reforming church governance, and strengthening interfaith dialogue reflected a vision of a church not withdrawn into itself, but boldly engaged with the world it serves. Yet perhaps his greatest legacy lies not in the reforms he enacted, but in the tone he set, a tone of gentleness, integrity, and trust. In him, many saw the image of a true shepherd, one who smells like the sheep, who walks with the people, and who always points beyond himself to Christ. As the church moves forward under his guidance, the legacy of Pope Leo XIV will be remembered not only in the annals of history, but in the lives of those he touched. He has reminded the faithful that the church is not a fortress, but a family, united, wounded, yet always moving toward the light. In an age longing for meaning and mercy, Leo XIV has become a symbol of both. His papacy is not just a chapter in church history. It is a call to holiness, service, and renewal in the heart of the modern world.